Good evening and a warm welcome to you all. My name's David Hewen, and from all of us at Garrett, it's such a delight that you could join us today to celebrate the launch of Bernadette and Ann's new book, Witness Specialist Moderator, The Critical Role of Catholic Educators in a Changing World. Importantly, I wish to acknowledge the lands of the First Peoples on which we gather today. I reside here in Naarm, or Melbourne, and acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Before we begin and I introduce the true stars of the show, I do have a few administrative matters to deal with. Tonight's event is being recorded. As we do at Garrett, we'll send a copy of the recording to you and all of those who have registered for tonight's soiree in coming days. We recognise some people who register can't join us live, as sometimes life gets in the way, yet I'm sure they don't wish to miss out. I'll shortly open the chat function for you. We expect to have some time to respond to any questions or comments you might have throughout the session. I'll do my best to moderate as many responses as I can, but understand if we have lots, we may miss out on getting to your individual submission. Please don't take this personally. All questions and comments are considered important. It's just that time may not allow us to answer all, as we will close the session at around 8 p.m. We'll be hearing from Michael McGirr, Bernadette Mercieca Ann Rennie, and I will pop in occasionally. Bernadette is a secondary religious education teacher. Just let me bring Bernadette in. There's Bernadette's smiling face. Bernadette. Bernadette's a secondary religious education and maths teacher at Our Lady of Mercy College in Heidelberg here in Melbourne, a research assistant at Victoria University and a study specialist for VCE Religion and Society here in Victoria. Bernadette holds a Master's of Theology, a PhD in Education, and has been an assessor for both VCE Religion and Society and VCE Texts and Traditions. And congratulations, Bernadette, because you can now indicate on your CV in the future that you're an author.
Thank you.
So that's very, very exciting. Anne's been doing that for quite some time, in fact. Anne has over 25 years experience in teaching Melbourne Catholic schools. She's got a master's degree in religious education and in educational leadership from the Australian Catholic University. Anne's held a number of leadership positions and has been a VCE English assessor and currently teaches at Genazzano in Kew here in Melbourne. Anne's a great friend of Garrett's as she's authored and compiled many books for us, including our annual Prayers and Reflections for Teachers, and an old favourite of mine, the Australian Catholic Youth Prayer Journal. And that was such a beautiful book that we used to do. And also I'd like to bring in Michael McGirr, a great friend of Garrett Publishing, who is always supportive of our work and that of our authors. As an author, Michael's books have sold over 200,000 copies. His most recent books with us offer prayers and reflections for Lent and Advent. This Cup We Bless and Doorways to Hope and Joy are two of our favourite works we've recently published. And next year, Michael will be doing a book of prayers and reflections for ordinary time. Every day is new. Michael's a very well-respected educator and currently works with the team at Caritas Australia. Michael, there's much more to you, but in the shortness of time, as one of your books is titled Books That Save My Life. Perhaps Bernadette and Anne's may save the life and careers of Catholic educators. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, David, and hello, everybody. It's great that we can get together like this online, and this is an occasion to celebrate because this book, which I have been enjoying so much, called Witness Specialist Moderator, is just wonderful. And I'll tell you what makes it wonderful. It is the fruit of Anne and Bernadette. Between them have 50 years experience teaching religious education. And well, they should get the Order of Australia for survival. But when you read this book, you realize that they love it. They actually they actually are into it. They are into passing on a really precious tradition to young people in a way that young people can appreciate and live with, and they can support and nurture their life. It's just terrific. I have been a teacher for a long time, and I've known situations in which people resist teaching RE, or they get it to make up a load, or it's a bit the sort of nobody's favorite. It doesn't need to be. I used to tell some of my colleagues, faith is fun, that this is actually you're with young people in a fantastic time of their lives, full of questions, absolutely full of questions. I was talking to a very well-known Archbishop just recently, and I did say to him that I don't think anybody should be appointed a bishop unless they've done at least a full year of teaching Year 8 RE. That is credibility, when they're pumping with energy hormones, but that existential big question mark, which sadly fades over time, but when it's bright in neon, it's fantastic. I used to love it. And I could one of the things about this book, and it does cover many years of experience, is it did make me think a bit about my own experience when I was at school, which was high school in the 1970s. And people bag RE at that time, so it was a bit of a bald spot. I don't think it was. I thought there was a lot of good things that happened, but I'll tell you, found something just yesterday which will give you a clue of how different school was in my time. When I was in year 12, every kid in year 12 was given this. I went to St. Aloysius in Sydney. It is, some people won't even recognize it. It's a book of matches. And I found I've still got it. And it's got the school's name on. Every kid in year 12 was given a book of matches because it was assumed that every kid in year 12 was a smoker. Now, the world has changed. Has humanity changed? I wonder to what extent. One of my most memorable RE teachers, probably the most memorable, never taught RE because he wasn't allowed, because he wasn't a Catholic. His name was Alan Clausen. But he led the St. Vincent de Paul group at school, and he started the development group. And the development group organised the Walk Against Want, and we sold things outside Pitt Street Uniting Church before Christmas, and we got familiar with development issues. And actually, since I've been working with Caritas, I've thought back on that. He was a really committed, beautiful, prayerful Christian person, and I owe him a lot. The other thing about some of my RE teachers, and this I suppose I do miss, they were all pretty large personalities. They didn't sing from the same sheet at all. And yet that was fine. They were giving quite different messages, but kids can process that. Kids can deal with diversity. What they don't like is bull dust. They don't like people faking it. But when one of the priests comes in and says that Nelson Mandela should stay in jail because he's a communist, and then the next teacher the next year is all for free Nelson Mandela, kids can cope with that because they are dealing, coming from a place of conviction and passion. Kids cannot really deal with the bland. Anyway, I could talk a lot about my time, but I made that mistake at the live launch last week in Xavier talking too much about myself. So what I would like to do is just read a few snippets from this fantastic book. And just snippets. This is Anne talking about her time at when she was a kid at Genazzano, and said the teachers, religious and lay, knew their subject and they knew me. Fantastic. They knew their subject and they knew me. relational teaching, and commitment to what it is, expertise. And Bernadette writes, oh no, this is Anne again. Today, the world looks very different. Times change, and the voice of the people of God asks for a new way, a way of being in the church that is authentic for this age. I think we're all captivated by that question. And turning over to Bernadette, I love this. I have small pockets of memories of those early days. This is her childhood, including a vivid memory of the large oval picture of what was called the guardian angel, which hung above my bed. There were two small children, a boy and a girl, with the angel, who had her hands extended over the children as they stepped forward. I don't remember being afraid of this image, but rather having a certain sense of comfort and protection. Isn't that interesting? Because some people assume that an older style of religion was sort of full of fear and darkness and shadows. Not necessarily. What Bernadette experienced was comfort. And I was pointing out before, over my shoulder here is a picture of a lady of perpetual succor that hung over my mother's bed for 55 years. And it was her friend. And Mum was very private, beautiful woman, but rather private. And I'm sure she spoke more to Mary than she spoke to anybody else, you know. And that it was heartfelt. And people always think that religion of the past was a bit like a ride on the ghost train. No, it was actually a beautiful place. Look, I'll just give you a couple more because you're going to want to hear more from Bernadette and Anne than from me, but they will be too modest to read these bits out. It's beautifully written. Oh, there's a lovely long section, probably too long to read, where it is, excuse me, coughing. This is Bernadette talking about her early time at university and the people she came across. And some of them, you know, names I know, and probably people here do too. Bren Donahue, Stan Lim, Chris Gleason. Chris was at the launch. Liz Nowotny. And the places they went, Corpus Christi, Greenvale, and the retreats they went on. And I thought, gosh, this was a happening time, you know. And it's interesting. You do say, Bernadette, that that Mother Teresa, what did she do? She entrusted Corpus Christi to the Jesuits, a home for alcoholic homeless men that she started. She entrusted. Actually, she rang up the Jesuit provincial and said that her sisters were leaving and he was taking over next week. That's what happened. And Mother Teresa, you got to hand it to her. She got things done. I love the way that one of the things about Mother Teresa was she was very pretty strong. And this is from Anne. As has been said before, the Catholic school is the church of the future. Ain't that true? And our students often arrive as pretty blank slates. Yep. Actually, but hungry nonetheless. You know, you can say blank slates. I pretend to think if they arrive with very empty stomachs spiritually, and they're desperate to be fed. And when it works, it's joy. I would say, dear, I won't read it now, but look, there is a fantastic part which Anne and Bernadette have done together on page 136, 137 about prayer. It's lovely. Did you two have fun writing that bit?
Yeah, we loved it.
Those are two glorious pages that should be everybody, just those, or 2 or 3 pages about prayer. And I'll just take one snippet from the end. And you're writing together, we recognize how vastly the world has changed in the last 5 decades. Yes, we're no longer giving Year 12 kids books of matches to smoke cigarettes. And that we need new tellings and appropriations of our long-held narratives. Yep, we got our beautiful tradition. We need to find the new growth. And this book helps. it's a wonderful, I would say, put this in the hands of any starting teacher.
Mm.
It will remind them of the basic covenant of relationship, you know, and I think teaching is suffering from a lack of focus on that. I have a dear niece who, very good teacher at North Coburg Primary School, tough kids, tough class she had. And after 4 or 5 years, she went off and did something else because she said, I wanted to be a teacher, not a data collector.
Mm. Yeah.
And when I started teaching, I mean, it was pretty chaotic. I wasn't a natural, but I was in the school, my first year teaching, 1988. I was in the school one Sunday afternoon photocopying, piles of photocopies, because I was going to give the kids worksheets to keep them quiet, you know. And the principal came out, and I thought, great, I'm going to get brownie points for being in on a Sunday afternoon. He says to me, oh, what's all this? I said, oh, well, I'm getting ready for class. And he said, oh, is this for the whole term? I said, no, this is just for Monday. Piles of paper, you know. And he came back to me and he said, just remember one thing. You are paid to talk to kids. And I never forgot it. It's really basic. And St. Ignatius, I was in the Jesuit order for 2 very happy decades, said, we don't preach. We converse with people as you would after dinner. And the phrase he used was the conversational word of God. And this book will get you wanting to talk to people, but a reminder that actually we are called to talk with young people about the things of God. So thanks everyone for listening to me for far too long. I'm going to hand back to David.
Thank you very much, Michael. As always, insightful. And I know there were many other paragraphs and pages that you would have liked to have read. I am now going to bring in the lovely Anne and the lovely Bernadette. If I can get the right buttons. Now I know that Michael is a hard act to follow. But as I've read your wonderful new book, I know you're up to the challenge. And may I say directly, congratulations, lady, in writing Witness Special as moderator. It's your turn tonight to shine. I know you do that every day in front of your students, but for our participants tonight, I'm going to let you hold the fort for a few minutes. So I'm going to leave, again, if I can push the right button, and hopefully everybody can see your beautiful, smiling and very proud faces.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, so we might just start where our book began. It started as just an idea that I had about 2 years ago, almost to the day. Yeah, close to that. And I think had just at the time published a book of prayers or something like that. And through Facebook, I contacted Anne, and she took a little while to respond. But then she got back to me and we ended up having a coffee together. And my original idea was us just sharing our stories of growing up Catholic. That's right, Anne, isn't it? Like the second half of the book at that stage, which is more the broad, more academic part of the book, I suppose you could say, was not in our minds initially. Initially, we wanted to just tell our stories, me growing up in Ballarat and Anne growing up in Kew. Yeah, so Anne, what?
Yes, so we met, and those stories came very easily. Telling your own story, you always make it larger, embellish it, and it was easy to write. But the other thing that we were thinking about as RE teachers was who's going to teach when we go. And we were thinking about who's coming on, authenticity, witness, the state of the classroom now, the demographies that we're dealing with. So that became part of the sort of the latter part of the book, with suggestions and ideas as to how we deal with a very different world. So the book spans 60 years from our sort of primary preppy days to now. And I suppose, Bernadette, one of the things we also wanted to do was to make it a bit of a primer for people who were coming into the system, whether Catholic or not, to get an idea of just how it was and how it is. But without being very heavy-handed.
Yes, and part of what we ended up then doing is at the end of each chapter, we've got some reflection questions. So we're thinking that could be really helpful for pre-service teachers to read a chapter and talk about the questions, or parish groups or school staff, RE staffs, to read a part and think about the questions. I guess the other thing is we've taught RE for many, many years. I didn't initially teach it for about 3 years because I was in the state system for 3 years on a studentship, and you didn't come straight into Catholic teaching, but when we did, like, we had what Michael Buchanan at ACU would call a pedagogical drift. Like, we started off with the guidelines, and then that gradually drifted in to Know, Worship and Love, and that stayed for quite a long time. Then it became electronic, and then in recent years we've more gone to a new RE framework, and that's kind of floated around as well. There's no, I guess Michael was saying, in a sense, there's no specific starting or ending date for any of these different methods come through. So we tell a little bit of our story and how texts and traditions got started at a certain period of time, and how religion and society, and how our audience, our students, have changed.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things the book also makes very clear is that we owe an enormous debt to the Loretto sisters and the FCJ sisters. They were totally formative for us, as well as our parents. So we are looking at a time when we grew up where going to Mass was tribal, we were compliant. And now we're looking at a classroom where many of the children enter and they'd have no or very little knowledge of the Jesus story. So how do we make the classroom invitational for all of them, all the children we have in front of us?
Yeah, we're teaching students who the only liturgy they would experience would be a school Mass. They would not enter a church perhaps any other time, maybe Christmas, but not at any other time. And you could probably pretty much guarantee their parents as well. But that's not to say the students are not interested. Would you agree, Anne? Like, there's still an interest there from students, and it's just that it's kind of a bit newer to them than what we might have expected in earlier years.
And we also think it's really important that the RE lesson is a lesson that is different to any other on the timetable. Sometimes we have to deal with the topical, what is happening in Israel, what is happening locally or nationally. And if the girls and boys don't get us talking about it and moderating their own discussions, maybe no one else is doing that. So I think it's a really important capture place as well for young people to be able to discuss civilly, but also dissent and ask questions. And that's a privilege.
Yeah, and although our book's not a manual as such, but we have got some teaching ideas that we've tried in our own classrooms. I, for example, later in the book, from when I was teaching at Xavier with Year 9s, how there's a picture of Mary and Jesus on a two-wheeler bike going along, and that's what the boys created. They had to create a modern image of Jesus as a teenager, because we don't know what happened from when Jesus was 12 to when he was 30. And so that's what they created. And they had to then write a prayer to go, or a reflection to go with it. And I was just blown away by the level of the reflections that the boys, these are, rough and tumble year boys, wrote, having photoshopped Mary and Jesus into, some were going 10-pin bowling together, some were in a canoe. Like it was just amazing. So using technology to enhance some images and then using that as a stimulus for reflection. You did some other sorts of things too, didn't you, Anne?
Yes, yeah. So I think the thing is giving our students permission to be creative and to have license to express themselves and the honesty of themselves is really important. And also to share that. Sometimes, peers can be very judgmental, but they can also be very supportive. So we try and create atmospheres where it's a building up of who young people are. And that's very important. So we try to bring out the poetic and the artistic and the musical and the creative and even the sporty in our students. We're mindful of shorter attention spans these days. So how do we deal with that? Children don't read as we did. So we are dealing with a change in attention as well. So we've got to work to, provide work and stimulus that will engage the young ones in a real and sometimes provocative way.
Yeah, because we're very aware of the secular world in which we operate. We emphasize that quite a lot. The fact that students aren't innately sort of drawn to church or to liturgical sorts of things, but they are interested in just social justice, and so we talk in the book a little bit about some of the things that students do, or we talk about in one part of the book we talk about the excursions. We used to take students at Xavier to the Jewish synagogue and to a Hindu temple and to a Buddhist temple, and all those kinds of things, which we would never have had when we were at school, but are really significant for students these days, where we're trying to give them a really broad understanding of faith, I think. Anne, would you agree?
And also, yes, and to basically enrich their own understanding of our faith, the home faith, by looking at others and appreciating others and understanding that we are an inclusive, multicultural country, and we have many different ways to God. And that's very important. And I think, and one of the beautiful things about teaching young people today is their level of tolerance and inclusivity, which I don't think was necessarily the case when we were growing up. It was very partisan. So there's a lot to build on with our young people. Bernadette, I think one of the things that people might be interested in is the framework for our book, which comes out of the University of Leuven, and this was something done through Max, the Max School. So the witness is our growing up and formative years. The specialist is the training, the education, the experience we've had. And the moderator is putting us into what we call a dialogue classroom in a recontextualised world where we are, I suppose, helping the conversation amongst young people who have very different and various views, and acknowledging those views, affirming them, and making sure it's a civilised and healthy place for their flourishing.
Yeah, there's an interesting question in the chat, Anne. What Anita is saying, have we included interfaith relationships in our book, and how well do our students understand Christianity? It reminds me again of when I was at Xavier with Year 10. We used to bring in students from Bierlich College, a Jewish college, and they would come in, and they were the same age as the students, and they would get up and speak beautifully about their Jewish religion, and the boys could ask them questions. And then I'd always go back to the students afterwards and say, could you do the same for Christianity? And I think, sadly, they couldn't do that quite as well. But I think we do try to build their understanding, but not in the same doctrinal way that we would have had when we were at school. But we do try to cover a lot of, we use a lot of scripture. Yeah, so students leave school, we hope, with a really good understanding of scripture.
So look, we do cover a lot of ground, and look, it's a broad sweep. You know, our experience, the experience of the classroom, the changing demographics, secularisation, all those different sorts of things. We try to colour a picture for the pre-service teacher, the current teacher, the interested general reader, just so they get a sense of the multifarious things we are dealing with in the contemporary classroom, and all the things that the children are bringing, both good and bad, that the teacher has to deal with. We no longer just teach, as everyone will know. There are so many other things that are happening in the classroom. So we touch on some of those as well in a passing manner.
Yeah, an interesting question too from Fiona, like asking how we include other faiths in the classroom. I know I've been really fortunate, Anne has too. We both travelled to Israel. I did with my parish and you did recently. And I was very fortunate to travel to Russia before all the trouble that's there now. But and we did an icon tour. So I try to bring in the Orthodox religion quite a lot. When we're doing a unit on Mary, for example, we look a lot at image Orthodox icons. I would also, if I had like a lot of sick students, Fiona, like include some prayers from their tradition as part of our daily prayer. There's a lot of richness in those traditions.
And especially at year 9 and 10, we certainly look at other religions, and there's a great deal of interest in them, and as comparative, and where we meet our commonalities and our differences. So we try to enrich the girls under their own understanding of the Catholic tradition, but also affirm absolutely the brotherhood that we share in faith.
Yeah, so we hope it's a book that will inspire you. We hope it gets into the hands of RE teachers. We were very happy when we did a launch at Xavier last week that the Trish, the librarian there, bought 12 copies of the book to distribute to her RE teachers at Xavier. And we thought that was just amazing because it's kind of the book. We don't want it just to sit on a shelf. We want it to be in the hands of especially young beginning teachers, partly to give them a story of where we've come from, because they weren't born when we experienced all of this, but also to open questions for them about how they might engage in a modern 2023 classroom.
And one of the things with the question is enabling, to look at mission drift from schools, to look at staff formation. It's really asking them to have crunch some questions that might be contentious about how their school and Catholic identity is being diluted or being affirmed. These are issues that we also touch on. We touch on the idea of the importance of leadership and acting in a way that says this is who we are, not again in a heavy-handed way, but in an overt and daily way. So that becomes the fabric of the school. So we're very mindful of that, and we are. I suppose our reason was really looking to the next generation, supporting them, and hoping that we have the young people coming through who will do a great job, a slightly different job for the next generation, but they'll know the entry points.
I noticed Jeff is asking about how we link Genesis and science and that, and I think that's important too. As I was saying, we use scripture a lot, and particularly when we're looking at Genesis, we look at how there's two stories and they do up a table and they see one story 7 days and one story is 1 day. Adam's created at the end, at the beginning in the other. So we do a lot of that, and I must say, To Know, Worship and Love does have a few nice little segments in it where it's got the Pope and bishops saying this is the church's approach these days, that we're not taking a fundamentalist approach to stories like creation. That's why we do the scripture. We try to give students a very meaningful understanding of it so that they're not taking it all literally. Yeah. I remember just recently at Our Ladies, we were looking at how Abraham's wife Sarah had a child when she was older, and later in the section it says she was 99 years old, and the girls are kind of looking at me like, how could a 99-year-old woman have a baby? And I said, like, 99 is just to show how wise she was. Like, people really probably died when they were 40 in those days. And she thought, does that mean the Bible's telling lies? And I said, no, like it's just a literary sort of thing to show. But it's those type of conversations to try and take students beyond what they might have learnt, rather maybe a little bit fundamentally in primary school.
So yes, so I suppose that here comes the come on now, buy it. Yes, look, we are just really, we had fun doing this. It took us about, I think, 18 months altogether. We used to meet at Baldwin Library and, do the dueling laptops. It was great fun to think about our growing up, and we have absolute gratitude to our parents and our various sisters, and the privilege of teaching back in our schools today. But it was also, we didn't want the book to be too academic. We wanted it to be real because our experience is real, it's daily. We also promote the classroom teacher as the person who is really most important in the school. The principals come and go, leadership teams, they come and go. Often the RE teacher is a stayer. And that relational context is very important. So we are really championing the classroom RE teacher.
The other thing that Anne and I do, we talk a lot about the religious educator leader. There's a whole section on that in the book. And we also have suggestions for schools. And one of our suggestions is that, kind of like the old studentship idea, that Catholic schools sponsor their graduating Year 12 students to do a bit of theology as part of their degree. And that's not hard to do at Melbourne University. For example, you can link in with the Faculty of Theology and do a couple of subjects. And then the school would have a little bit of a commitment from the student to then come back and maybe teach for 2 years. So we're hoping maybe schools will come to that idea as a way of building their RE faculty, because people like Anne and I, we're on the edge of retirement, and so are a lot of our fellow RE teachers. I've taught RE teachers at ACU in Melbourne, and they're very well-meaning, but a lot of them have very little background. And so the more we can encourage young teachers to financially help them to get better qualifications, so they can come back and we can have more RE experts on our staff.
And we're also mindful of mentoring our young people so that they have confidence when they go into the classroom. We know that young people are full of, are very vocal. They're activists. They have dissenting views. They've got all these things that are being streamed into them from all over 24/7, so that they can be quite strong in their views. So our young people who are, I won't say necessarily always holding a line, but there's well, they're putting a position forward, if you like. So we want our young RE teachers to feel confident in their knowledge, so that they're just not going in, reading a book and thinking, okay, that's it, I'll just talk about that. They've got to have a width, a depth, all that sort of stuff. It's important because the children pick up if you're doing something in a shallow way. They know fakery.
Yeah, so maybe, David, could we maybe open the floor now to questions? I know a few have come up in the chat, but there might be some people in the audience who'd like to verbalise some questions.
Indeed, I have. I'm going to bring Michael back in, so everybody's on the. So hopefully everybody can see our 4 happy faces. And there's a couple of questions or comments. If I may, I'd just like to, my experience, I went to a Salesian school, and I don't remember much from my RE day. To be honest, in my advancing years, I don't remember much from 40 plus years ago. But I did have the opportunity to work for a year with kids from Mount Scopus, which is a local Jewish school here. And I retain 3 very special friendships with those kids that I met when I was a 13-year-old. So that's 40 plus years ago. And it was the most enriching experience of my high school years. Not just because those friendships were fostered and that understanding of interfaith and what it meant to be a Christian and more specifically a Catholic. But to share those friendships for 40 years is something that I thank my then RE teachers for a gift that has enriched my life and continues to do so. So the power of the experience and the lived experience of RE is very positive. Don't ever ask me about scripture. However, that's something that is beyond me. Let's have a look at a couple of questions and comments. And I'm going to do a plug or two because somebody asked about creation and Genesis. And so we have a wonderful book at Garrett published, authored by Mary Collo, called The Two Hands of God. It's an outstanding work. And really fantastic for early secondary years or upper primary school kids to actually explain the Genesis story in a way that kids will it'll resonate with the stuff that they hear about science. And then we also published several years ago a fantastic book called Faith Today that looks at science and Christianity. So if you're really wanting to answer those difficult questions that kids come out of science and immediately head into RE, there's a fantastic background work done by Chris Mulherron, who's a teacher or is an academic. He's a pastor, but he's at Catholic Theological College here in Melbourne. So I'll just give those 2 books a plug because as publisher, that is my job to some degree. That's not to take away in any way, shape or form your work, Anne and Bernadette. So there's lots of congratulations. So just a couple of points, if I may. Jeff did actually mention that's modern science to faith. Is that something that that you ladies, or even Michael, when you were, back in the classroom, so to speak, did you often have those challenges with kids that, science was telling them one thing and science is based in fact, whereas, faith is based in faith? It's quite a difference. So how do you address that divide? If there is indeed a division.
I used to always set up a debate between myself and the head of science, and the kids loved it. And so that's one thing I did.
I think I'm in no way a scientist, but I always try to draw out the sort of complementarity of the two. That one is objective and tangible, the other is imaginative and intangible, and that they are both worthy and they are both important, and one doesn't strike out the other, so that we can have an equilibrium with the two of them.
Bernadette, do you have any comments there?
With the science background, yeah. Well, like I said about when we're looking at stories, and I talked about Genesis, but also when we're looking at gospel stories too, some of the miracle stories, and I'm very much try to get students to get a realistic understanding. So you know, when we're talking about a man filled with demons, we talk about probably he had schizophrenia. So we try, or the other man writhing around and on the ground maybe was epileptic. So we try and make very physical links. I talk a lot about Mary traveling when she's 3 months pregnant to visit Elizabeth, and how awful you feel in the first 3 months of your pregnancy, because we've had children. We know what it's like. You're not feeling the greatest in that first trimester, and yet that's when Mary trudges for several days to visit Elizabeth. So, and the baby leaping, well, maybe the baby did leap, but then the baby does kick when you get to a certain stage as well. So we try and demystify scripture while still maintaining its sacredness. Yeah.
And using the language of today, we've got to be mindful that there was an original audience and there's today's audience. So there are different languages that we need to unpack for them.
Sue, earlier in the discussion, in tonight's discussions, she indicated, and I hear this quite a bit, there's so many RE teachers who are non-practicing of any faith and teach it basically because they sort of want to move up the ladder, the pay grade, or the corporate, or the school ladder, if you like. How can we change this environment when, you know, how can we change that environment and that mindset that actually faith and RE is as important, if not more important, in a Catholic-based school?
Yes, we do mention this and make quite a strong point about the fact that RE should not ever be residualized in a Catholic school. I mean, we're Catholic. That's the reason. And look, it seems to be that RE is always the subject that co-curricular takes over, and there's music practice, and it's just moved to the side a lot. I think there's got to be the timetabling has to say that RE is important. This is about life lessons. This is about the future of the generation. It's the soul of the next generation. So I think we've just got to have some leadership who say this is very important. And we know we're always going to have careerists who are just ticking a box to move up, but we also need to find those people who are happy to stay in the classroom because it really matters to be there and to pass it on in an authentic way.
We also assess, don't we? And like when I was at school, you would never think of assessing RE, but we're not assessing students' faith. We're assessing their content knowledge, and we expect them to do just as well in their RE assessments than they do in any other subject. Xavier, we even had exams in RE. So
it is difficult, and this is the reality that we're all facing. That many of the kids want to get somewhere, and RE, some of them think, is not going to be helpful to get that mark or that ATAR to get to that university, and some of them are dismissive. And I suppose we're trying to turn that around and to make RE a place where it's a circle of trust. You've got an adult who cares that they tell a story authentically, that there might be some memories formed about the sort of school we are, the sort of relationships we have, where we've come from and where we're going to. There are a lot of intangible things that happen in an RE classroom, but it's building that relationship. It's all about that school spirit, which may in fact be spiritual as well.
I would make just two brief suggestions, if I may, dealing with this thing of RE being low status, which is a problem. I think it makes a big difference when the whole leadership team in a school teaches RE. I think that's really baseline, and even just one class. And in fact, I worked in a school once where the whole leadership team took Year 12 RE, and there were a lot of advantages with that. The second thing I think is really important is that the wellness program and RE need to work together. nearly every school now has wellness programs of one kind or another, but that really needs to be embraced by RE and sort of part of that department, because we believe that wellness is a faith journey, you know, and all the mindfulness and all of that. This is actually it's a real problem if that is separate from RE.
Yeah.
A lot of schools, I find, they are separate. You know, there's a leader of faith and there's a leader of well-being or wellness or pastoral.
Yeah, I think that's,
and that, you know, I'm not sure how often they connect in it. I think they do in a few schools, but rarely. I think they are quite seen as quite separate.
They are quite separate, I think, Michael. Yeah. But we do try to do things like meditation, like that. That's something the students actually very much like. And so, and we use journaling too. We have what we call listening books at Our Ladies, where students reflect on something, and it's a listening book's not something we use for assessment, and that I don't read it either. So, but and we might put on some quiet music and they might just write about how they're feeling, how they're feeling about what's happening in Gaza, for example. And meditation, you know, we don't do it as often as we should, but when we do it, the students really, really like it.
I'm just conscious of time, and there are a number of curly questions around, you know, how do we get people excited about the Eucharist and so forth, which would lead to another hour's discussion alone, and I'm not sure we're going to get to that. There are some comments and congratulating on you, you ladies, for having the courage to write the book and put your ideas down, and a number of people are saying just how your thoughts tonight or parts that they've read of the book to date really resonate with their own stories. So so that's, you know, I think important. Publishing is a great honour. Authors entrust their ideas and their intimate stories, their hopes and their dreams to us. Their words create their words create worlds. Bernadette and Ann, you've devoted your life to the mission of educating young people in the faith. An RE educator, indeed any educator, turns up to inspire the young each day with a passion and a commitment that too often is not celebrated. Educators live in a world of change. Each year, each generation brings with them a barrage of new and sometimes unexpected issues that you have to address on a day-to-day basis. And it's in those times RE leaders must be most visible. As you state in the book, they must be prophetic in their faith. You are, as RE leaders, servant leaders. Their profound connection to the faith allows others in the school communities to see mission in action, to see what it is to be a faith-based person, whether their students are Catholic or of other faiths. They can see that faith replicated in action. And that empowers young people and others in the school community to be their best selves. And so in Witness Special Moderator, Anne and Bernadette, you've shared your own lived experience, your own hopes and your dreams to help a new generation of Catholic educators to maintain a Catholic identity, to develop a hardiness to weather the turbulence of distance and change and frustration and the like. And writing a book is a courageous endeavour. I congratulate you.
And well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank you
for trusting us.
Well, I thank you for delivering us this gift of your wisdom, passion, learnings, and your sense of hope for the future as well. And I thank you for entrusting Garrett with Witness Specialist Moderator. and you're just holding up your mugs to remind you that
Yes,
every
yes,
time you have a cup of
yes,
coffee,
Yeah.
or an Irish whiskey, perhaps,
Yeah.
with a little drop of rum or something to get you through
Yeah.
the day or the evening, that you did write a book successfully, and it's a wonderful book. Just finally, I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge our publishing director, Karen Taylor. So Karen guides authors' visions into reality with grace, professionalism, and expertise. I'm sure you agree, ladies.
Absolutely.
And in
very
30
lucky.
years, in 30 years of
Yeah.
in 30 years of publishing, I can honestly say that Karen is a true marvel, a super publisher, if you will. Karen and I are supported by a wonderful and talented, hard-working team that are in their own way made this book's journey possible. I'd like to thank Sandy and Charmaine, Rachel, Rose, Jolene, and Russell, who are here in spirit. So thank you. Please support this. So this is the buying bit, right? So this is the ad. There's no such thing as a free webinar. And Michael's the sale of the century model. So is Anne. Please support Anne and Bernadette's inspirational work. Now, if you've already bought one copy, why not buy another or two or more? Christmas is less than 60 days away.
It's a good read.
Yeah, sorry.
It's lovely.
Sorry to tell you.
Beautiful.
The good thing about Christmas being 60 days away means that the school year is coming to a close, and so there's some positives there at this time of the year. But share the book as a gift with your colleagues and your teams, your family members. For those of you who have joined us internationally, the book will be on Amazon US, UK, Barnes and Noble and the like very shortly. If it's not already live. We've had a few little niggles and unexpected issues in getting that book up for international customers. So those challenges should be overcome very shortly. So Anne and Michael and Bernadette, thank you very much for participating in tonight. It's been a wonderful event. We had a great session at Xavier, as Bernadette mentioned earlier. So thank you very much, and again, congratulations to you. It's a wonderful it is honestly a wonderful achievement, and you hopefully this book will inspire younger teachers to also think and share about their own hopes and dreams, their own experiences for another generation to come. We need Catholic authors, we need younger writers, and your efforts and Michael's inspire people to think maybe they can share their own experiences and have some insight and thoughts as well.
So David, what I was going to also add, like Anne and I are hoping next year to go out to some schools, mostly in Victoria, but we might be tempted further afield.
First class flights, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. So if you felt there was value in us coming to share in some professional learning experiences for your RE staff, I'm probably going
to reach out to Garrett.
Reach out to Garrett, and they will let us know.
Yeah, and we can let you know.
Even Ireland.
No.
Maybe not.
Yeah, first class, obviously.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for tonight. Finally, if I may, we live in a lucky country, but we have all witnessed terrible images and stories from Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and so many more war-torn nations. I'm no specialist in foreign relations, and I'm no expert to moderate international policy. But all I can do is pray for peace. So Friday is not just a day that celebrates, I think it's the International Day of the Teacher on Friday. So that's something that, is very special, and teachers, RE or otherwise, should be rewarded, congratulated, acknowledged for their work. So that day is important. But also Francis has called for a day of prayer for peace. I wish Michael and the team at Caritas, in their efforts to get humanitarian aid.
Thank you, David. And I'm sure people have heard about, we have 4 emergency appeals at the moment for Libya, Morocco, Gaza and Afghanistan. So whatever you can do.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, I know it's tough times, but every little bit helps. And a prayer, a thought, or a small donation go a very, very long way to help Caritas, which is an outstanding and amazing organisation in the work that they do, not just internationally, but here in Australia as well. So my thoughts and prayers are for those people who don't live in such a lucky country as I. And my thoughts and prayers are also with Catholic educators who no doubt are helping young people navigate their understanding of these horrific events.
Doing our best.
In such challenging times. So we think of you as well. So, but notwithstanding all of that sort of, down bit, we're here to celebrate Anne and Bernadette, and you've done just such a wonderful job. This really is, you can't see it, but it really is an outstanding book. So thanks everybody for joining us to celebrate the launch of Witness Specialist Moderator, and thank you for your ongoing support of Garrett Publishing. And with that, I'm going to close tonight's session. God bless everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sarah.
God bless.
Yeah, thanks for coming.